for this project, this iteration, I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I decided to focus on a few things. So one thing was I changed the textures for each floor of this level so that it would seem like each place was its own kind of area. So this was a little bit of zoning. So as you can see here, this top floor has this kind of worn down brick feeling. I also added that light at the end of the hallway there so that it would lead the players more clearly, as we were talking about using light to guide players, or at least that's one use of it in class the other week. So here this is pretty much the same, this hallway down here. Another thing that I tried to do was I added a little bit more cover in different areas, as well as more health drops. One thing that I noted in one of my previous iterations was that this game doesn't really have checkpoints. So if you fail at one point, you have to go back to the beginning of the level, and that can seem a bit tedious to players. So I didn't want this to really happen to them too often. So I tried to have distinct points after a major area so that they it would feel kind of like a checkpoint without being exactly that. So here, again, this is pretty much the same. I tried to make it a little bit different so that I added some shooters that were on that ledge over there so that the player couldn't hide behind the first corner while they were trying to get the monsters. And that's trying to better the flow so that the player doesn't just stay in one place, and no place is too perfect for them. And again, here this is just a secret, so it's supposed to be hidden, which is why that texture remains the same. And you get that better weapon, the super shotgun is what they call it. And I'm going to try to avoid using that again, just to show that you don't need to find the secrets in order to be successful in this level. I found that even with the added health bonuses and weapon drops, that it was still a difficult level to beat, and even I could not defeat this level without paying attention to it. So I tried to do the voiceover at the same time as I was playing the level, and that did not work, so here we are. And this is the third level. It has kind of a similar feeling to the floor above it. It's just a different color. My issue was I was trying to find different textures that would feel the same, and so it wouldn't be too disjointed, but is what we ended up with here. And one of the major improvements to this level was this floor. One thing I changed was I added more floor to ceiling cover, because I realized that and I also made it bigger. That was most of the improvement, was resizing it, because I already had some. But you will see here that these zombie men, those shooters, they're really accurate. So that's one thing that I found when I was testing this, was that even if you're running around, they will hit you. And that was why a lot of the players were dying on this part of the level, was because no matter how fast they were going around or how crazy they were, the zombie men were going to shoot them, and they were going to lose because of that. I also decreased the number of these little floating guys, because they're just really annoying and gang up on the player, and it makes it a lot of not that much fun dealing with them, because there's not really a good way that I have found out to do that exactly. So again, you have the teleportation here, so you can go retrace your steps, and maybe if you had some drops that you didn't pick up, you can go ahead and do that. So that was another thing, is that I didn't want to have it so there were so few that you end up dying because you didn't have enough lives. I also didn't want to end up with having too many. So here I felt like this was a good amount, because maybe on the first pass you don't need all of them, but then on the second pass you do. Another change I did here was that I made these monsters, you can make some of the monsters deaf, is what they call it, and that means that they don't react to the sound of shooting or other fighting going on, so they have to see the player or see another monster acknowledge the player for them to be able to start moving. And so that's why here on this floor, first you start out with dealing with all these monsters that shoot, and then here, once you run into the second part, that's when you get attacked by all the pink monsters. And that's so that it gives it variation between the two parts. I didn't want them to be the same, and in the first few iterations just felt like they were ganging up on you, and this makes it feel a little bit more managed and controlled. Of course, it's still a little bit chaotic, so it's not completely controlled, which would not be fun. But and you saw, or you might have seen, that when I was changing the textures, some of it got messed up. So there was an extra floating wall. I already got rid of that actually by the time I did the voiceover. It's just not in this video. And here I mentioned that I wanted to add extra kind of checkpoints. So here that was kind of like a little mini one just to get the player going and get them across this part. That was very hard for all of the playtesters I had. But it's not enough, and it's not apparent, like it's not right in the middle of everywhere like these little blue ones that you just saw. So the player kind of has to be looking around for it. So it would most likely be that the player is trying to find other collectibles, and that's when they would find that. Or they're running away from monsters, in which case they probably do need extra health. And so when I said that at the beginning of the video, I didn't know what to change about this level. One thing I did was I started looking at videos about puzzles and making puzzle games, because that is what I want to do for the next round. And so I decided to implement a little mini puzzle here. And in the video, it was very interesting. They talked about several things, including how to tell the difficulty of a level or a difficulty of a puzzle. And one of those factors is the steps it takes to solve that puzzle. So here you have, there is a blue door very similar to the one that you saw in the previous floor, and so that might indicate to the player, hey, I really do need to find that blue key. And then this monster gets activated with all the other ones, and you might see, oh, there's something over there, maybe let me investigate. And you can see the blue key peeking out over there. So there's another step that the player identifies what the issue is. And while they're fooling around with these switches, they might realize, oh, these platforms go up and down. And here again, this was an issue with the texture. I already fixed this, but it made it very hard to find the switch, which is not intentional. But anyways, once the player realizes that they can activate those switches and change the platforms, then they can think, oh, now I need to use that switch or use that platform to get up high enough so I can get in there and get the key. And in that area, again, you saw I added some obstacles. So it's not cover per se, but it's things that keep the character having to move around and hinder the character so that it can't just run from one corner of the room to another corner of the room in an endless loop. Here they have to actually be thoughtful about where they're going so they don't end up stuck in a corner. So these are the little obstacles I was mentioning. So for example, if they wanted to use this green barrel, they have to kind of lure the monsters by standing there and then be careful not to get trapped by them. There is the yellow key that I needed. And now I just need to make sure not to die on this run through. Another interesting thing from the video was, oh, and right here is again one of the kind of checkpoint rounds, that again is not clearly apparent that there are health in there, though I did try to make it a little bit brighter and have the torch right there. But if the character needs health, they'll be more likely to be wandering around like this and find everything that there is to help them get through the next part of the level. But one part of the part of the video was that solving problems shouldn't be like just figuring it out, figuring out what the developer had in mind. It should be like problem solving. It should be something about discovering something about the world, and it shouldn't feel like a hack once you finally figure out the solution to it. I thought that was very interesting, and I tried starting on making my level for the next iteration, or thinking about it, but currently I'm not sure how exactly to do that, which is why I decided to stick with this level and make it better than it was, because I knew it still needed improvement. I just, at the beginning, I wasn't sure how, and while I didn't look up that video to apply it to this level, I found it really interesting, and I thought that it would be helpful and make it a little bit more diverse, so it's not just kill monsters, run around, go to the next part, but it made the player think a little bit more. So here again, it's the same level or floor as the beginning part, which is why it's the same brick pattern. And chainsaw is fun. I found this was a pretty good balance of pickups for this section to defeat the monsters, because these monsters are a little bit higher level than the other monsters that we've been dealing with so far. And my tactic for this in this video is they were kind of start fighting against each other, so I just let them go for as long as they wanted to before I stepped in. And here finally we get the red key, which we saw at the beginning of the level from across the gap over there. And then we can head back down to the second level where we saw the red door. And here it's again, the player can go back and pick things up that they hadn't picked up before, or if they want to explore more, they can. So since I'm going for completion, that's what I'll be doing. And so having the chainsaw here gives you the extra option of you can run behind like I am doing with this, or you can use the chainsaw and go on the offensive, which is fun either way as play modes kind of, or strategies. And finally the exits, but if you're not careful, these guys will attack you, and if you're low on health, help. So that's my level for this round. I think I did improve it it was small changes, but I think they did make a significant improvement. Thank you.